Hi there, welcome to this revision video for the historic environment. It's an exam walkthrough on the Americas and Drake's circumnavigation. So in the exam, there will be one 16-mark essay on the Americas and Drake's circumnavigation for the historic environment. So it's really important you know this topic really well, but also as part of revision, do some preparation for exam questions. So this video is going to walk you through an exam question and also give you some sort of suggested ideas for other types of questions you might face. One of the things to really focus in on are the second order concepts in history. So thinking about the kind of language you might use, and we'll come back to this a little bit later on in the presentation. But the second order concepts in history are cause and consequence, similarity and difference, significance, and continuity and change. Now, for the historic environment, you really need to focus in on causation, change, continuity, and consequence in terms of thinking about the types of questions that you might get. So a really good way to revise to think about these key elements and of the question when you are preparing for answering this examination. Here are some example questions around those particular focus. So we're actually going to look at the consequence question in detail today, but a type of question that you could get might be: the main consequence of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe was an increase in tension with the Spanish. How far does your study of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe support this statement? And that would be worth 16 marks. The causation focus would be looking at more of the reasons why circumnavigation happened. So Drake's circumnavigation of the globe was motivated by his desire for exploring the world. How far does your study of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe support this statement? And a change or continuity type focus. The main change brought about by Drake's circumnavigation of the globe was to bring about more trading opportunities. How far does your study of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe support this statement? Okay, so we're going to look at this question in detail. So, in terms of the consequence question, this question is: the main consequence of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe was an increase in tension with the Spanish. How far does your study of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe support this statement? Now, you need to include in your answer key knowledge of the site. It needs to be really relevant evidence, so it needs to be well selected. So you need to think about the idea of killer facts, like what's a really good fact, piece of knowledge that can really put across your argument. You want to avoid descriptions, so we're not looking for lengthy descriptions of the journey. We're thinking about that precise knowledge. Now, analysis means you need to analyze the importance of the factor. So you need to use those analytical phrases like this meant that, this shows that, this led to, as a result. And try and link facts together, comparing their importance throughout the essay. But crucially, you're going to have a conclusion at the end where you need to judge which is the most important factor. Now, what you're looking for in this essay is 3 well-explained arguments and a conclusion. So it's quite useful to think about this kind of triangle shape when you're thinking about your answer. Now, the first factor you are going to talk about is to actually agree with the statement that they give you. So actually going to give you one of your paragraphs in the question where it says increase in tension with the Spanish. So that's going to be your first argument. I've put that in green because it kind of like agrees with the statement. But then you're looking for 2 more factors. Another factor could be looking at trade and conquest. So that's a key consequence of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe. So you're going to write paragraph 2 is going to be on that. Third paragraph could be the advance of knowledge, seafaring and technology during this time period. And then your final paragraph will be your conclusion, where you are going to say ultimately whether you agree or disagree with this interpretation. Looking at a plan for this answer, thinking about those 3 different factors, talking about the consequence being an increase in tension with the Spanish, you could talk about how Spain felt defeated and humiliated. The Spanish ambassador was really angry. Spain began to fear Drake as El Drake. I think that's a lovely piece of knowledge. And going back to what I said about the idea of a killer fact, that's exactly that, isn't it? The fact that the Spanish would regard him as the dragon. The Spanish ambassador and Philip II demanded Drake be punished. Elizabeth, however, responded by knighting Drake and even got the French ambassador to perform the ceremony. And again, that's a crucial bit of knowledge, and that shows you that there was an increase in tension with the Spanish. And also just knowing how war subsequently did develop, and we know about the Spanish Armada in 1588, Drake's circumnavigation can be seen as sort of like a long-term factor for that. So that therefore is a consequence. Trade and conquest is another key consequence. So England just simply gains lots of gold and treasure from the Nuestra Señora de la Concepción. How much money went to Queen Elizabeth I, for example, the fact that Drake found Nova Albion, many other explorers wanted to emulate Drake, trade links were made in the Spice Islands, in buying those 6 tons of cloves, for example, just more knowledge of South America and also North America. You could talk about things like the Drake Passage in there, for example, the fact that Drake charted the sort of coast of Chile and went through the Straits of Magellan. All of these would be really, really important consequences you could write about. And then the advance of knowledge of seafaring and new technology, that improved greatly. Drake kept meticulous records, diaries, journals. Other people, like Drake's cousin as well, John Drake, he kept a diary, discovered maps from Spanish ships, for example. Okay, thinking about Nuno de Vasca, for example. A new route was found to the Pacific, which is known as Drake's Passage. Again, you could get that in the Trade and Conquest paragraph as well. Drake learned how to make rutters from privateer Guillem de Testu. Spanish secret rutters and maps were discovered as well. So huge advance in knowledge of seafaring and new technology. And again, bringing your wider knowledge of Elizabeth, of course, by saying that, you know, this kind of knowledge would certainly help people like Walter Raleigh in the future when he went to scout out the Roanoke colony in Virginia in North America as well. So we're going to have a look at an example answer. Now, on this paragraph, I've just kind of really outlined to you and shown you how to use your knowledge, your analysis, and make clear links back to the question. And this is a really, really good technique for you to use. Now, when we're talking about knowledge, we're just talking about key names, key events, key dates, key people, for example. So you see I've highlighted here some numerous examples of key knowledge. So, for example, like knowing a keyword like rutters, for example, knowing the French ambassador performed the knighting of Drake, knowing the name of the Spanish ship Nuestra Señora de la Concepción, for example, knowing that Drake was known as El Drake. These are all examples of really specific knowledge. Analysis, you want to kind of think about key phrases that you can use. I always think a really good one is the fact that, because it helps you to analyze a piece of evidence. A phrase like this shows that, this meant that, this led to, and then using phrases to build your argument, like in addition, for example, furthermore. These are really, really good. And then making that link to the question, so quoting the question in your answer, you know, all the time, using that phrase, increase in tension with the Spanish. So let's have a look at this example answer, and you can really look to do this within your writing as well. It is evident that one of the main consequences of Drake's circumnavigation was an increase in tension with the Spanish. For example, the fact that Drake was able to plunder so much wealth from the Spanish, such as Nuestra Señora de la Concepción, led to Drake being feared, resulting in tension. He became known as El Drake, meaning the dragon. This shows that an increase in tension with the Spanish was a key consequence. In addition, Drake's piracy showed how vulnerable the Spanish were in South America, where Philip II thought the Spanish could not be attacked. Furthermore, maps and rutters were taken from the Spanish, opening up the possibility of more attacks and raids. Elizabeth I also increased tensions by refusing to punish Drake despite the pleas of Philip II and the Spanish ambassador. In fact, she exacerbated the situation by getting the French ambassador to perform the knighting of Drake in 1581, which further inflamed tensions. Therefore, an increase in tension with Spain, eventually culminating with war between England and Spain, including the Spanish Armada of 1588, was a crucial consequence of Drake's circumnavigation. Okay, here's how a paragraph on trade and conquest could look. On the other hand, another key consequence of the circumnavigation was an increase in trade and the beginnings of conquest. England gained lots of gold and treasure as a result of the circumnavigation. The capture of the treasure from Nuestra Señora de la Concepción was worth over 480 million, and 50,000 ducats were presented to Queen Elizabeth I on New Year's Day 1581. In addition, Drake also began to attempt to colonize different parts of the world, which foreshadowed further attempts at colonization by Walter Raleigh. In 1579, Drake found Nova Albion in what is now California and claimed it for Queen Elizabeth. Furthermore, on the voyage home, Drake made trade links in the Spice Islands. Therefore, a key consequence of the circumnavigation was an increase in trade and beginnings of conquest. Here's an example answer for advancing knowledge in seafaring and technology. However, another really important consequence of the circumnavigation was an increase in knowledge of seafaring and new technology. Drake made a very detailed record of the journey. Francis Drake's diary in his journal of the voyage included both illustrations and maps. The knowledge also included captured rutas from the Spanish, which included navigation charts and drawings of harbours, channels and shorelines. Drake had been influenced by the mapmaker Guillaume Le Testu, who was with him on the raid on Nombre de Dios in 1572. Drake had been able to take maps and rutas from the Santa Maria, a Portuguese ship which he captured in 1577 near Cape Verde. Drake had been able to find a new route to the Pacific, which is still named in his honour. The fact it is still called Drake's Passage in the 21st century is testament to how significant this consequence was. Drake also laid claim to new lands, and the fact he was only the second European to circumnavigate the world was a highly important consequence. Okay, now one of the things that's going to make a really crucial difference to your overall answer is to write a really good conclusion where you can really hammer home your final opinion. So there's some good historical language here for a conclusion. You need to make sure your conclusion is really clear. So really clear on what your overall argument is. Don't sit on the fence. Make it fairly concise, but also make it conclusive, that you are really able to explain what your final opinion is. So let's have a look at this example conclusion. In the final analysis, it is apparent the main consequence of Drake's circumnavigation was an increase in tension with the Spanish. Admittedly, the circumnavigation did lead to an increase in knowledge of seafaring in England and sparked off further exploration. However, it's very likely this would have been developed anyway. However, the fact that so much treasure was taken from the Spanish certainly increased tensions with Spain, leading to a further deterioration in their relationship. And this can be seen as an essential contributory factor to the war with Spain and the subsequent Spanish Armada of 1588. This all demonstrates the increase in tension with the Spanish was the most important consequence. So there you have it. That's a full example answer. What we're going to do now is just look at a couple of other questions in a little bit less depth and detail, but just show you a little plan for them. So preparing for a causation question is a really important part of your revision. Here is an example one. Drake's circumnavigation of the globe was motivated by his desire for exploring the world. How far does your study of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe support this statement? So your first factor is easy. You're going to talk about his desire for exploring the world. So there you have it. Second one that you could look at is this factor. So you could look at trade and economic gain. He did it for trade and economic gain. And the third factor could be that he did it for revenge and part of the political rivalry with Spain. When you've done all that, you're going to have a conclusion. So there you've got your four kind of paragraphs, 3 key arguments plus a conclusion. So let's have a look at how you might approach this question. So desire for exploring the world, you could talk about the idea that this was an age of exploration. There was intrigue and mystery around the Strait of Anian, which perhaps Drake was looking to find. Explorers like Martin Frobisher had already been exploring the Americas, and that may have inspired Drake, for example. The desire, for example, for England to develop stronger relationships with South America and to explore there and move down from Central America. These are all kind of key causal factors. You could talk about how England had moved away from being involved in the slave trade and was looking more at, plundering Spanish treasure ships and things like that. So desire for exploring the world and finding out a little bit more would be a key factor. If you're looking at an alternative factor, trade and economic gain, you could talk about how Spain was becoming more aggressive, the cloth trade had collapsed, that England needed new trading opportunities, beginning to look for South America. The fact that Drake eventually claimed Northern California as Nova Albion shows they're looking to develop sort of trade links and colonization. The fact that they managed to get some trade with the Spice Islands as well. So you kind of got to look at what actually happened on the actual circumnavigation as well, in terms of why it might have happened. You could talk about the fact that Drake is really sort of motivated by this plunder, and that economic gain is a crucial element. That's why the investors get involved. People like Christopher Hatton, Queen Elizabeth, for example, the Hawkins family, Francis Walsingham, etc. But then you could also talk about how perhaps it was about revenge. Remember that there's the Spanish attack at San Juan de Ulua that fostered a desire for revenge among people like Drake and Hawkins as well, I suppose. The fact that Drake was a Puritan, he's anti-Spanish, he hated Catholics, for example. So these would also be key causation factors. One thing to bear in mind here, when you think about this question, is that a key element of the circumnavigation, it was never Drake's plan to explore the whole world. It very much was the plan to go and raid Spanish treasure ships. So I probably would be looking at the second factor, the red factor, the trade and economic gain here, as my most important factor. But it's up to you to see what you think. Okay, so we're just going to look at a change question now. So the main change brought about by Drake's circumnavigation of the globe was to bring about more trading opportunities. How far does your study of Drake's circumnavigation of the globe support this statement? So again, what you're looking for here is to think about some examples of changes. Now, you're going to be able to draw on some of your knowledge of the consequences question here, because in some ways it's two sides of the same coin. But you've obviously got your given factor, which is going to be more trading opportunities. And then the other couple of factors you could look at would be economic gain for England and Drake. And a third factor could be an increase in tensions with Spain. So actually not similar to the consequences question. And then you're going to have your conclusion. So if you just look at some ideas here, we can see here that in terms of trading opportunities, you could talk about Drake's Passage, the map and knowledge of rutters, for example, the connections with Spice Islands, buying her 6 tons of clover, inspiring other explorers like Raleigh, or even people like Humphrey Gilbert that go on to explore America, or even that increased knowledge, enabling more trading opportunities in the future, such as when Ralph Fitch goes to India, or when James Lancaster goes in with the East India Company. So even those long-term sort of trading opportunities you could kind of bring in here. The economic gain for England and Drake, so simply how much money they actually stole, the Nuestra Senora de la Concepcion, the fact that Drake person became very wealthy. You could talk about the Drake Jewel, how he bought Buckland Abbey, a house in London, he appeared at court. And then the increase in tensions with Spain is obviously a key change that's brought about during this as a result of the circumnavigation as well. Okay then, so thanks for listening to that exam walkthrough. Hope that's been useful. Goodbye.